The story takes place in the 1980s Los Angeles. We meet Bobby Johnson, a young gangster from the Young Street Houses gang who has just been released from a juvenile detention center. He is welcomed by his neighborhood friends, the Ray Loco Hyper crew, who also belong to Los Dulces. Upon returning to his old neighborhood, Bobby encounters his girlfriend Carol. However, instead of being happy, the young man complains about her smell, believing she had been smoking PCB, a hallucinogenic drug. Seconds later, Lamp, the main heroin dealer in the neighborhood, appears. Barely noticing him, Ray threatens Bobby, telling him not to continue selling drugs in his territory, but Lamp strikes back by ordering his bodyguards to aim at him. Annoyed, Bobby and his friends leave to avoid trouble. After this, Ray makes it clear to Bobby that they must drive out characters like Lamp from their neighborhood for the safety of the residents. Additionally, he warns that this dealer is interested in taking over. When entering his apartment, Bobby meets his little baby Jimmy. Despite this, he scolds Carol for being too close to Lamp, labeling her as a PCP addict. In response, the woman reproaches him for having a child on her own without money or support from Bobby, leaving Jimmy with him so that they might get to know each other. After spending the day with the baby, the protagonist apologizes to Carol, congratulating her for also raising his child. The next day, Ray organizes a meeting among Los Dulces to decide how to regain control of drug sales in their neighborhood. That night, Bobby, Carol, and their friends attend a party at a nightclub owned by Lamp. After having a good time, Carol leaves the party, leaving the care of Jimmy to her boyfriend. Shortly after, as Bobby heads to his apartment, he is intercepted by Lamp, who invites him to his residence for a peaceful conversation. There, the dealer forces him to snort a line of heroin, threatening that if the lights interfere with his business, there will be lethal consequences. The protagonist regains consciousness in the morning and returns to his apartment, only to find Parole asleep on the sofa after having drugged herself with PSP. Because of this, Bobby holds Lamp responsible for what happened. At dusk, Los Dulces attack Lamp's nightclub, killing one of his bodyguards. They then restrain him so that Bobby can deliver a mercy shot. Later in a safe house, Ray tattoos a black heart on Bobby's cheek, symbolizing that he killed a member of a rival gang. Returning to his apartment, Bobby orders Carol that they must move because of what he has just done. Months later, it is revealed that Carol and her son have moved to a small house in another neighborhood, tired of being locked in. The woman goes out onto the street, ignoring her boyfriend's warnings. Minutes later, Bobby receives a visit from Loco and Ver, who arrive in a luxurious convertible thanks to the good business of Los Dulces. The man admits that he owes him a favor in the car, but on the way, they invite a prostitute to join them, who then turns out to be an undercover police officer. She arrests them for drug possession. Later at the police station, Bobby's interrogated by an agent who makes him confess that he killed Lamp. For this, the agent asks him to reveal who his accomplices were so that he wouldn't spend too much time in prison. However, Bobby remains silent. 10 years later, we see little Jimmy living with his mother on Hover Street, where he is taking his first steps into the criminal world after being invited by Ray to join Los Dulces. Meanwhile, in prison, Bobby defends Loco from the Aryans, another local gang. It turns out that Loco owed the Aryans 10 cartons of cigarettes, a debt that now falls on Bobby and his allies. After that, Loco tells the protagonist that Ray has kicked him out of the gang and that he is no longer concerned with the neighborhood's needs. Meanwhile, Jimmy receives his first paycheck from Ray after stealing car stereos. The next day in prison, Loco reveals to Bobby that Ray has his son stealing goods for the gang. That night, Jimmy gets into a car to steal the stereo, but unfortunately sets off the alarm. Immediately, Willie, the owner of the car, appears and shoots Jimmy in the back as he tries to escape. When the police arrive and discover that a child was shot, they arrest Willie, who shows no remorse despite leaving his wife, Mrs. Manchester, alone. In the following scene, we see Jimmy recovering in a hospital. The next day, Bobby distances himself from his allies after hearing about his son's accident. Later in the dining room, a member of the Aryans irritates Bobby, who does not hesitate to beat him up before the police take him away. Meanwhile, Jimmy, now in a wheelchair, is assisted by Nurse Shelley, who tries to encourage him to play with the other children at the hospital. We return to Bobby, who is assigned to share a cell with Ali, a prisoner who offers to quench his thirst for violence. Shortly after, as Bobby approaches the yard, he is intercepted by the Aryans and their leader Buddha, who begin beating him. Fortunately, Ale appears with his men to fend off the Aryans, arguing that Bobby should be treated fairly. Buddha then demands the cartons of cigarettes owed to him, a request that Ali immediately fulfills, releasing Bobby on his behalf. Jimmy then receives a visit from Dr. King, a social worker, who asks him about the situation at home. In response, the boy states that he manages on his own on the streets without any help from his addicted mother. Later in prison, Ali confesses to Bobby that he had a child to whom he never gave proper attention. So much so that at 13 years old, the child left with some gang members who eventually led him to his death in revenge. Ali killed those delinquents, a crime that earned him life imprisonment. In prison now, he makes it clear to Bobby that it is in his hands to break the cycle of hatred between parents and children and to guide Jimmy onto the right path. Days later, we see that the boy has completely recovered from his injuries, and social workers arrive at the hospital to take him to a juvenile institution. Before leaving, the little one bids farewell affectionately to Nurse Shelley, who had given him the love that Carol never could. When Jimmy arrives at his new home, the other kids try to tease him, but he scares them away by shouting that he is a devious, a term referring to his gang affiliation. Meanwhile, Bobby is in the prison library studying general knowledge, surprised by how many things he did not know. Seeing this, Ale explains that if he continues down this path, his violent attitude will change to a kinder one, opening up the possibility of being granted parole. A few months later, we see that one of Ali's allies removes the black heart tattoo from Bobby, which had marked him as one of Los Dulces. After that, Bobby appears at the prison office to request his parole. As he leaves, he tells Ali that he managed to obtain it, promising that he will never return to Los Dulces and that he will guide his son to a better life. With that, he says goodbye affectionately to his companion, thanking him for all his teachings. In the next scene, we see a renewed Bobby visiting his old house in South Los Angeles, where he reunites with Carol, who, unfortunately, is very high on PSP. As he walks around the place, he finds a document stating that his son had been admitted to a social institution. He immediately heads to that place to see Jimmy. At first, the supervisor denies him access due to lack of special permits, but upon seeing that he is an educated father who only wants to spend time with his son, he allows him to enter. Finally, Bobby meets Jimmy, who finds it hard to believe that he is his father, having grown up without him. Despite this, the boy asks him to take him out of that place to get revenge on Willie, the man who shot him. Although Bobby makes it very clear that they won't kill anyone else, the boy is disappointed upon hearing this, pointing out that his real father would not hesitate to pull the trigger. After that encounter, Bobby returns home, embracing Carol and apologizing for not being there to raise his son. The next morning, a couple of police officers show up at Bobby's house looking for Jimmy, who had fled the institution the previous night. For this reason, Bobby goes out onto the street to find out what happened. He meets some children, friends of Jimmy, who affirm that he is the Johnson, so that they can tell him where his son is. Thanks to the information from the kids, Bobby heads to Ray's warehouse, making it clear that he only wants to see his son and nothing more, rejecting any benefits of rejoining Los Dulces. Ray allows him to enter so he can see Jimmy, who refuses to return to the institution despite his father's promise to get him out legally. Ray then interferes in their discussion to convince Jimmy to stay with Los Dulces. As Bobby repeatedly exclaims that Ray is a false leader who does not care about his people, Ray deals him a punch, "Let's do the job," rendering him unconscious. In another scene, Ray reveals that he has Willie kidnapped, offering Jimmy the long-awaited revenge. Although Bobby appears before Ray can pull the trigger, trying to dissuade his son from making the worst decision of his life, his fury is such that he manages to knock out Vare and take his weapon, pointing it at Ray, who hides behind Jimmy. After several tense seconds, Bobby lowers his weapon, and recalling Ali's teachings, tells his son that all evils can be forgiven except a murder, something from which there is no turning back. This causes doubt in the boy, prompting Ray to take out his gun and point it at Bobby, who continues with his speech, declaring that he is willing to die if it means saving his son's future. Finally, Ray lets the boy go, and he rushes to embrace his father, who promises that they will have a proper life by following the rules. After also releasing Willie, Ray pulls the trigger of his pistol while watching Bobby and Jimmy leave, revealing that the gun had never been loaded.
If you want interesting movie recaps, like, share, and subscribe to follow us for more movie recaps.